Hello and welcome to Take You to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. I am your host, JP John Paz. With me, of course, the former WWE World Tag Team Champion, 8-time Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest trainers ever in the history of the business, the Doctor of Desire himself, Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, how you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing great today. Thank you very much.
What is going on with JPWA?
We're in our fifth week of JPWA's fall session. Not fall, winter, spring, summer, and fall. Yeah, it is our fall
Yeah,
session. Yeah,
really is.
and and these guys have been working hard. Uh, we did some great promos tonight. Had a good time, and Ricky Steamboat came by and visited again last Thursday. So we're doing good.
I don't know if JPWA is training certain ways, but I've seen some things out there on WB TV lately that's a little I don't
What
know.
are you
There's
talking about? You can't just be that vague. We have to know what you're talking about because then I can tell you if we're teaching that or not.
well, let's just say AJ Francis, or we were talking about a little. He's on the top of the rope doing the kind of attempting to go for maybe the old school or whatever, doing the thing up top. But he was counting. He wasn't really paying attention, but he's holding on to the opponent, almost kind of like I guess you would say, making it look like it's a little phony baloney. You could say.
Well, well, I think he was probably doing the best he could with what he thought it should be and adding his spin on things. But uh, sometimes it looks good in your head, and then in application, it really doesn't come across so much. But we haven't done the walking on the ropes yet at JPWA, but that is something you need to learn. Hopefully, they can get that down.
Interesting though. I thought I was like that was a little bit much. I mean, I like him, and and I like that group, that pairing with
Right.
Hit Row. I was like, yeah, it was a bit much. Him not paying attention to the opponent, counting, and
Well, you know what? If people are liking it and people are telling them that's good to do and they're digging it, then if it works, it works. So, yeah. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. And if they're saying it's looking phony and you thought it was looking a little phony, I mean, maybe they want it to look phony. Hell, I don't know anymore. I really don't. I didn't see it, but they're getting an opportunity to go ahead and be on TV and show what they got. And he's trying to add a little sizzle to his steak, I guess, and that's probably a good thing. At least you're trying stuff. So I'll give them that. I will give everybody that. You got to try a bunch of stuff and keep what works sometimes. And I think it's called Hit Row, correct?
yes, yep.
Hit Row. Hit Row was there before, and they thought they had a good thing going. So obviously they brought them back because somebody thought they had a good thing going. And until they're told otherwise, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, I think.
With Hit Row, no Swerve. Swerve is in
Yeah.
AEW. I mean, they're still Hit Row, but missing a key component of the group.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think anybody has to, or everybody has to adjust sometimes. And I think that's the proof of being a pro. See if they can do it.
Although, if you ask them, they were saying the girl Brianna Brandy is the most important part of the group, not Swerve. So
Okay.
interesting by those
Well,
guys. Interesting.
at least they believe that. And I think that's the first part of that theory to happen. You have to believe. And if she is, she is. It'll come out. And hopefully she is. Hopefully she's that ingredient they must have. So I haven't seen enough to make that to bring that opinion out, but at least they do.
Here's something very, very random. It has nothing to do with Hit Row or anything. But I was talking to Mike Mondo, and he was quoting you. He was using your quotes. He was saying "think, shoot, but work," and he was saying different things. So your training was stuck in Mike Mondo, who's now training in New York, NYWC. He's the head trainer.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Mike's always been one of those guys who um, believed in the fundamentals and basics as being important too. So, uh, and Mike was and is a hell of a performer, a hell of a worker. So good for him. That's nice. I mean, if it look, not everybody has the same opinion, and everybody has their way of doing things. But you have to have something at least to go on, because I'm sure there's different ways to take somebody over. There's different ways to grab a hold, but I think the main component is be safe and make it look good.
So that was interesting though. He's training guys, but he's using, some of your knowledge and obviously some of Rip Rogers. It's the guys that he's learned from
Yeah.
and passing it along.
Well, I mean, that only makes sense. And Mike was he's a student of the game, and Rip trained him. I helped train him, as did Steve Kern, Billy Kidman, Norman Smiley, all those guys in FCW. He got a dose of all of us, and so, and we were all saying the same thing uh, in our own way, but it's still the same. It's all um, basics and fundamentals. They never go out of style, and as long as you believe that, know what that means when we say that, know how to build a match off that. Especially when you're starting out, you want to be able to have enough in your arsenal to know if you're going to go out there and call a match and you get lost, you know what to do next. It's second nature to you. And that's something we preached, and that's something Mondo knew and learned and preached and understood, because it is a feeling business. And you got to go out there. And sometimes just because you called it in the back doesn't mean it's going to happen when you're out there, and things don't always go as planned. But if you understand how to feel it and go into the next second nature thing, instinctive hold or instinctive move, um, that's where your basics and fundamentals come into play. And Mondo knows that. That's awesome to hear him say it. Yeah.
Oddly enough, we were talking about that a little bit. He was saying that they do too much like the video game stuff where it's just ingrained in there. They talked about it in the back, but then he said if something goes wrong,
Right. And
like they don't know what to do. Yeah.
that's why it should be stressed. Larry Bird said something about learning. He wasn't the best basketball player in high school, but he got the basics and fundamentals, and he also carried that on through college. And then when he got to be a pro, he had those basics and fundamentals. So it's not just wrestling. Everybody seems to think, football, baseball, basketball, and other sports are different. Well, they are, yes, but it's still basics and fundamentals in professional wrestling. And so, yeah, the video games are cool and the moves are cool, just at the right time and in the right flow of the match. And that just takes a while.
Hey, Tim Duncan, probably the greatest power forward of all time. To me, top 10 player of all time. His nickname, the Big Fundamental, from Shaq used to
Yeah.
call him that because
Yeah.
he said he was the most fundamentally sound player he's played.
Yeah. Don't do it until you get it right. Do it until you can't get it wrong. I mean, that's just a different way of looking at it. Where it's instinctive, where it would be so foreign to do it any other way except this way. And that's why Flair and Steamboat were so good together, because they just had that instinct with one another. So you meet guys like that where you have the chemistry with, and that's when you have a good match. I've said before, and like this week, I mentioned that if you couldn't have a match with Brad Armstrong, you didn't belong in the business. If you just listened and could follow, you're golden. And that goes back to basics and fundamentals. Also, just the little things, the details in the match, uh, the spacing and walking and keeping your head up and the body language. So that's what a lot of people don't get these days. But anyway, it's been like that for a while. It's not just these days.
It seems like I don't know if there's a screw up in the match nowadays. Like they almost go back to exactly what they were just doing, and it looks so phony. It's just like like ad lib a little bit. Go, change it up. Go in a different direction. They don't do
Well,
that.
right. But I think that could be what the culture's demanding these days. It could be what I think whatever it is you bring to that platform and you put it on and it becomes popular, because they do some really incredible stuff. A lot of guys go out there and can do some pretty incredible stuff. Um, so you can't fault anybody for that. You can't fault them for the excitement. But I think the it's certainly a different business than it was in the '80s, '90s, or even the early 2000s. So it keeps changing at a pretty rapid pace. And if that's what the fan base wants, give the fans what they want. You'd be stupid to try and do something else. So uh, it may not be our cup of tea, but it may be somebody else's. And if they're watching it and they're digging it, then okay. But if they're not watching it and the ratings are not, I don't even know what the ratings are. What would they be drawing these days? How many people are watching this and saying, okay, this is acceptable to tune in every week? What are the ratings on a weekly basis? Do you know?
So SmackDown is about 2.2 million on average. Raw, usually I know because of Halloween they were down to
Right.
1.5, but it's usually between 1.6 and 1.9, somewhere in like that range. I know when Triple H kind of first took over, they did a couple 2 millions on Raw, but that's pretty much it. AEW does 1 million a week, pretty much, or less.
So are those considered decent ratings for today? I mean, 2 million people is 2 million people, but how many? How does that? Where does that cover? What demographic in the United States?
So they're saying that is good ratings because between in the 18 to 49 demo, that's
Gotcha.
usually where it peaks, and that's they usually do very good in that demo. So they're saying wrestling is still good, not hot, but it's still consistent with the other shows on cable. I mean,
Consistent.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if you put it up against football, I mean, football kills it. I mean, stuff like that. Basketball, not so much. Hockey, not so much.
Yeah.
But baseball and especially football, they kill it.
Right. Well, then if wrestling's doing consistent and good, then it is a marathon. They always say that. So until something comes along for the culture to change, or somebody comes along and makes that change, like an Austin or a Rock or Mankind or something like that, uh, then it's going to be what it's going to be, and you're going to get the NIL players and people out of college that's a great idea in theory to get athletes and then say, hey, we're going to show you how to do this. But at the same time, it really is taking somebody from, let's say, not that it hasn't been done, but from football to baseball or basketball to baseball, to a different sport.
Yep.
Not that they couldn't be good, but I don't think they're going to be as good or as passionate. I could be wrong. But I know wrestling, you certainly have to be passionate about if you're going to be any good at it. I think where people aren't going to say, he's play acting. I don't know, but if 2 million people are watching every week and that's a good number, then give them what they want. And they take market surveys too, so they have an idea what people like.
And
I truly believe they're making an effort to listen to the fan base. I mean, honestly, I think Hunter is old school and understands. I think he understands the importance of old school and basics and fundamentals, but he also understands that he's living in 2022, and you can't do what you did all the time, or you can't do all of what was happening back then, but you can take some of the elements that hasn't been around in a long time and make them new again, and maybe people will come around because too much of the same old is the same old. So you got to change it up.
I wonder though with the NIL guys, some of them will get it. Obviously, some of them definitely won't. But you never know because we've seen some of the best football players of all time go to wrestling and they stink. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's just, you
yeah.
just never know. You've seen like bad football or decent football players come to wrestling and be pretty good. Like I mean, you just never know.
No, you don't. But chances are, uh, the extent of their knowledge of wrestling has been watching on Raw Monday or Friday SmackDown. In a bar in a room with guys, or going just for a night out having fun and not really taking it, looking at it for what it is, looking at it for what they think it is, and then coming to it and doing it are two different things. And having to do what they're doing these days, especially, you have to have passion for it, man. They've got full days at the PC, and it's not just in the ring. It's promos and it's study and it's lifting, and everything is self-contained, which is awesome. But if you don't have the knack for it or the instinct or the passion, uh, I think it makes it a little harder. Could be wrong, but it just kind of, I would think that.
Well, interesting, like just the approach of it all and what used to be successful, maybe training wise, maybe not successful now, or maybe they think it is. It's just like what we used to get like from you in your era. It's like okay, The Rock, Kurt Angle, Mark Henry, you got these big names. Nowadays, I don't know if we're getting as many big names from the PC.
Right, but I think that goes back to what was out there, and uh, who was scouting the talent and how it was found, and it was a different era. There wasn't uh, there was a surge of guys. You still had Memphis to go to. You had OVW, you had HWA, you had some places where you could spread these guys out and kind of get them off TV, and don't show them on TV right now, and have them hidden away like in Louisville or Cincinnati or Tampa, and let them get some of let them get some experience under their belt, and then come in and get experience on the road there, and it would it would help them. But when NXT became a third brand, um, you're putting guys on there who aren't really necessarily. You're never really ready, but you could be a lot more ready before you're going on there. I think on a nationwide TV, because now if you're green, they're going to see you're green. Maybe they'll follow it all the way through. I don't know, but some guys get exposed and then they get screwed because they they weren't ready. But given a little more time, maybe they could have advanced on. So I think though they're teaching the way at the PC right now, uh, in conjunction with the way the fans want to see it, in their opinion. So be that as it may, it may look hokey from time to time, or more times than not. Obviously, people want to see it that way. So I still don't know why birds came out of Matt Riddle's ass. I don't have a clue. You know what I mean?
I, f-
So
I feel like if you ask somebody at WB, they're not going to give you an answer anyway.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, did anybody ever explain that though? Is Matt still do the birds still come out?
I think so. I don't
Okay.
remember actually if
Well,
they
I
do.
don't. Okay.
Yeah,
So there you have it. I
very
mean, they're
strange.
doing it. They're doing it. They're not doing it to kill the business intentionally. I just truly don't believe that, but I do believe they're trying to be in tune with what people want these days.
I feel like they think like, wow, we have this cool technology, let's use it, and
Maybe
they think that's like the best use of it.
stranger things have happened.
And then remember, I don't. He doesn't do it anymore. Remember Strowman? They used to play the
Yes,
train when he used
choo
to run around
choo.
the ring. Yep.
Right.
I don't
So,
know why they do some of the things they do. Who knows with them? You never know.
well, yeah, I don't know. I really don't.
You mentioned before though about Brett Armstrong. You said nobody could. You can't not have a good match with Brett
Well,
Armstrong. But
hold on, John.
okay,
Hold that thought 1 minute. Hold that thought.
yes, oh, yes, holding the thought.
All right.
So you
Sorry
said
about that. These damn trick or treaters. I told them they're 2 days late.
so with Brad, you said obviously you can't not have a good match with Brad. Everybody should be able to have a good match. He's the topic of today's show. We wanted to talk about Brad Armstrong, all things Brad. Obviously passed away 10 years ago on November 1st, only 50 years old, which is nuts. Obviously, he's a very, very, very good friend of yours, best friend of yours. What do you think about 10 years passing already? I mean, that's crazy.
It is. Excuse me. Uh, it really is crazy. Um, because Brad was indestructible, and it was he was that guy who Flair requested to work with when he'd come to Continental or come to a territory that Brad was in. He wanted to get a couple matches with Brad because he was going to go out and have fun, and Flair didn't get to do that very often. Well, yeah, I guess he did, but with a guy like Brad, didn't have to call anything. He could or just do it and feel it and feed for whatever. And so, uh, yeah, it was kind of wild, man. 10 years seems like a long time, but it just seems like yesterday. And every year I've gone to put flowers on his grave. It's in Marietta, but it's more for me than anything else. And then Lash LaRue started coming along like 3 years ago, and we would sit around and then we start telling stories and just laughing. So it's good, we're getting together because of Brad, which is a good thing. We wouldn't get together any other necessarily any other reason, but um, so we're doing that, and it's wild because everywhere Brad went, he'd walk in and he would play with everybody. He'd mess with everybody. Didn't care who you were, top guy, bottom guy, didn't matter. But it always was that constant ball of energy just coming around. And it reminded you, well, uh, on his last match was in Pell City, Alabama, and we had the match, and it was one of those things. I don't. He was teaming with Mad Dog against Micah Taylor and myself, and it was an easy match. Knew how to tell the story. You didn't have to do anything. It was that kind of deal where uh, you had fun, we had fun, and that was the last time. That was the last time it worked. So then you go. I think back on those days, and we got here. We were traveling from Tampa, and we got to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. We had a cabin in the woods. We were moving from Tampa, and on Halloween morning, Brad called me, and I just got in like 4 hours before, and I said I'll call you back, or he was going to call me back that night. And it was the next day when I called, and Lori answered the phone and said she's following the ambulance now. And I thought, wow, that was impossible, but it did happen. So he's missed every day, not just by me, but from a lot of people. He touched a lot of people. I mean, he helped a lot of people. He was a hell of a coach too. He would come to oh gosh, Jody Hamilton's promotion,
Deep South?
Deep South. Thank you. And he got in the ring with the guys a few times, and just to show the guys how easy it was and to relax. So I say, if you could just follow it, he didn't have to say anything to you. You just felt him. He was going to take you over or do whatever. Uh, that was he had a lot of talent.
With him, when did you first meet him? Would that be Georgia in the early 80s?
Yeah, met Brad in Georgia. Him and Bob, and my Scott and Steve. They'd come over to the Falcons rest, stay with Brad for a little while, and So yeah, we had a good time in Georgia too. We'd ride. It was Brad, Tommy Rich, myself, Nick Patrick, later Johnny Rich. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. But
First
then,
match. Oh,
huh?
yep,
No,
you
no.
go.
Well, I was just going to say, then it was after that where uh, we talked periodically. I see him, and it was afterwards when after I broke my ankle, he asked if I want to go to Pensacola. So I mean, and it just was nonstop.
I was going to say the first match that I could find was on May 2nd, '82. You and Brad versus Chick Donovan and Ricky Harris, of all
Oh
people. Wow, what a tag
well,
team that is.
yeah. I think all four of us. Well, Chick had been around for a while. I was in L.A. with Chick, so that was the first time I met old Rick Harris. I worked with Rick one night in a singles match, and I thought he was saying harder, but he wasn't. And I kept hitting him harder. And he came back and proceeded to tell me, "You ever do that again, I'll cream you." And I went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So,
What
yeah,
was he really? What was he saying?
huh?
What was he
I
really
don't know.
saying?
I don't know, but I thought it was harder, and
Yeah.
he didn't. I don't think he ever told me, but he's a good guy.
Evidently not. Yeah.
Evidently not. No. So,
Then the
but
next month in June, I have a match, you versus Brad 1-on-1.
possibility. Where was that at? Is that in?
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay, probably so. Yeah. Yeah, we were baby faces then, both of us. But we had better matches later on when I was a heel. So I don't think two young baby faces at that time was going to be that exciting. Although I'm sure we dazzled them with all our wrestling knowledge. Yeah,
So what do you do when it's two young baby faces in the
the
territory
best you
working each other?
can. That's my answer. I'd give anybody today. The best you can. And Brad, but see, Uh, Brad was a good wrestler, and I was a babyface wrestler, and so we just went out there and did our reversals and back and forth, and he sold, I sold, and I'm sure I put him over.
Yes,
So
he won.
yes, yes, and so that's what we did. Just go out and do your thing.
I was trying to find a match where you beat him. I might have to double check. I don't
I
see
don't know
many
if I ever
victories for
did.
you. Yeah, I don't
You
see many
know,
victories here for you, if
there
any.
was a time. There was a time in Montgomery at TV, and this was a spin the wheel thing, and somehow Brad had the number, and to get the title shot, I was the champion, and the finish was I was supposed to grab the hammer at ringside and hit Brad with it, and he was going to get juice and bleed, and so I went down and got the hammer, hit him in the head, but he didn't bleed, but I went down and pinned him, and so he got back to the dressing room, and Bob was booking, and Bob asked him, he said, "What happened?" He said, "I lost the blade." And then he started telling me a story about he was working with the spoiler, Don Jardine in Atlanta, and he was supposed to get juice on the claw, and he lost the blade. So he goes, so Don got hot at Brad about losing the blade, not gigging, but so then I figured, well, he did the same thing with me too, because he didn't like getting juice. But that only Brad knows that for sure. If he lost his gimmick or not, or if he just felt like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah, he didn't want to do it.
Could be, could be. Never know.
I found an interesting match from GCW. Alpha and Sika, the Wild Samoans, defeated you and Brad in '82. What an interesting team that is.
Yes, I broke Sika's finger on one of those tapings, or it might have been that one. And I remember I think it was jumping in his arms or whatever it was, but he showed me and I went, "Ah, hell, he's gonna beat my ass," but he didn't. They were good. They were good guys too, but uh, yeah, I don't know.
They work stiff at all or no?
Oh, not at all. Those
Wow.
guys were great. Yeah, they didn't work stiff with me, so I'm sure they could be because that was what was called for when they were the Wild Samoans, and I think they knew we were just a couple of young upstarts. took it easy on us.
So you guys eventually leave Georgia. About 3 years later or so, you guys both end up in Mid South together.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. I was actually living with Brad and Tim. They had an apartment together. I believe it was in Shreveport or Baton Rouge. And when I came in, they said, "Man, you can stay with us if you want," because we were doing 3,000 miles a week. You weren't home a whole lot.
Tim Horner, of course.
Tim Horner, yes. And Brad, Brad had the room when we slept on the floor and the couch, and traveled a lot. So we had a good time there too. And Brad, excuse me, to show you how much respect he had in the wrestling business, Bill Watts was Louisiana was a big man's territory, and Bob Armstrong had been the North American champion. And when Brad was there, Brad beat Ernie Ladd for the title. So that wouldn't have happened unless Ernie said yeah and Bill suggested it. And so that's why I say if you can't have a match with Brad Armstrong, then you shouldn't have been in this business, because you could take Ernie put him over because he was that good, and he could work with anybody, make anybody look good.
It's interesting with him and being so good. Is that because he's a natural? Is that because he learned from his dad, or is he just worked harder than everybody else?
No, I think Brad. Yeah, I think you could say Brad was a natural, but Bob was he was in a class by himself. But in the family, if you look at all the boys, Scott, it's always been said Scott was got the brains, the business part of it. Brad had the working part of it from Bob. Stevie got the fighting part of it from Bob, and Brian got the showmanship from Bob. And each of the boys had their own uh, personality and something. But Brad, and they'll agree, Brad was the best worker of the four. He just had that ability, but he was also with Bob on the road uh, when he started, and learned a lot, and uh, got a good education. He got to work with some really, really good people. And how could you not be great when you're listening to guys tell you what to do on a nightly basis? Well, the only way you couldn't be great is not have the talent or the work ethic, and Brad did. I mean, he worked his ass off in the ring, worked his ass off in the gym, and uh, he had that work ethic. That's why everybody worked and respected him and wanted to work with him.
With him and obviously all of his brothers, like you said, they're all kind of split up, but obviously from the Bullet. So he does get that natural working ability from Bullet Bob. Was it just easier for him in general? Like, did he train a lot, or was it just like, yeah, this is so easy, I could just kind of,
I I don't think Brad ever took anything for granted, and those guys had to live in the shadow of their dad, and their dad was a hero to everybody, including them. He was just larger than life guy, and man, uh, Bob was the real deal. So, and the boys knew it. They lived with him, and so I mean, they that alone. See why I say that, because that alone hovered over everybody, I think, and they respected Bob a lot. Everybody did.
you mentioned he fooled around a lot in the back. He was very funny. He's great personality. How come like he's that way in the back, but in the ring he's just a technician, kind of not no personality, but he didn't show that personality. How come?
I've thought about that too through the years, because the deal was everybody would say if Brad could be uh, like he is in the back in front of the camera, he'd have it all. Well, Brian can do that in front of the camera. Road Dog that's him. Brad was that way in the back. But I think, again, being as close to Bob as Brad was, they were a tag team. Brad, grew up idolizing his dad, obviously, and so did Scott. They all did. But Bullet was such a straight talking, badass Georgia Southern gentleman type I'll whoop your ass and not think twice about it. That Brad uh, didn't want to. I don't think Brad had the sayings and the phrases down, and he could say them convincingly if you knew that was Brad, because Brad was that the easygoing, friendly, nice guy until you got him mad. But Bob always came off as that badass, every time serious baby face. And I think Brad, I don't want to say didn't know how to compete with his dad in that instance or in promos. He just had his way of saying it where that was Brad being authentic, and Bullet had. I think maybe I'm trying to say is the comparison was there, if not to anyone else except in Brad's mind, and to go up there and try and say the same things like your dad, you don't want to do, but you kind of are always going to be compared to your dad, so you're going to be that serious kind of baby face. Bob was was that guy that you knew uh, had the maturity and the skill to hurt you. He wasn't just playing. He was that guy who, as a kid, if you were playing basketball and your ball bounced over in some neighbor's yard, and the neighbor, got hot about it, and Bob would come out, stand right in the front yard. I'm just saying, watching the boys smoking a cigarette, daring this guy to make a move. That's the kind of persona. Bob was this guy who, you know what, every day is for real, life or death. I don't know if it's that dramatic or not, but I think comparing what Bob could say and how Brad could say it was just two different things, and it just wasn't Brad's deal cutting promos.
It seemed like that was the one thing that was missing from him. Then he could have probably been even higher. Maybe he could have been a world champion. Like, yeah, he could have been higher on the card had he had that personality from the back and the front.
Yeah, and I think Brad's humility also just it's one of those things where he was confident when he got in the ring, he knew what he was doing, and then you have to kind of figure out how you need to be on the outside, and that was Brad on the outside too. Just uh, the very humble, but yet he had that wit, that quick wit, boom, boom, boom. He'd leave you in the dust, and but he did it mainly in the back with people he knew, was comfortable with, and that happens sometimes. You get up and you just don't know how to say what you want to say. I can do everybody else's promo, but I can't do my own. And Brad could do everybody else. He can imitate them, mimic them, and have fun, and talk and all that stuff. But then to go out and be himself was a totally different thing. And and that's how a lot of people are. I mean, I can cut your promo or I can cut her promo, but for me to cut a promo, it's like, man, I'd rather do somebody else.
Right.
So yeah.
Always that was kind of the missing factor. But as you guys went along in Mid South, going back to '85, interesting team here. You and Brad defeat Hercules Hernandez and Jack Victory. What a team there! Wow.
Jack was great, and Herc, I got along with Hercules too. Ray Hernandez, or Fernandez, Ray Fernandez was in San Antonio, and I watched him grow. I mean, I literally watched him grow by the day. Well, I'll say by the day, but by the week. I mean, he would grow, and uh, but he was a nice guy. I liked Ray. I sure did.
Always liked him. Definitely was a big fan. Looked like $1,000,000. Jeez, like he
Looked
looked
like
like
a
a
million bucks.
big
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Crazy, but he fit the Hercules gimmick. He really did, man. And whew, what a powerful guy.
Another interesting team. This time it's you and Pat Rose, of course, the heavenly bodies there, you guys, losing to Brickhouse Brown and Brad. What a team that is! Wow, Brickhouse Brown teaming with Brad. Who would have
Well,
thought of
he
that?
was, yeah, he's in Louisiana, right?
Yep,
That
yep.
was, yeah. So yeah, there were a lot of different combinations and teams and things like that. And, uh, in at that time, and young guys, that was during and at the end of the Midnight Rock and Roll run. So they were giving a lot of guys chances, to shine, step out, or uh, giving them an opportunity. That's for sure.
Then the Lightning Express of Horner and Brett Armstrong beat you and Jerry Stubbs. Interesting partner
Why?
there, you and
Why are we
Stubbs.
doing these shops?
Yeah,
Yeah, where was that at? In Birmingham?
you and Stubbsy lost in Birmingham, Alabama, in
Mhm.
1986. Yeah, good memory there. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember it looks like it was 30 years ago. So,
yes,
yes.
almost 40. Jeez.
Think about that.
Yeah, holy moly.
Yeah. Yeah, we were saying I started taking pictures and getting paid from Gong Magazine and the Wrestling News with Jim Melby and Norm Keicher. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. I started getting paid for pictures at 12 years old. So if we start from 12, that means I've been been doing it for a while.
Yeah,
So yeah, but 30 years ago, that's wild to
yeah.
think we were
30,
losing
really
even then.
35. Yeah, it's crazy. Wow.
You know.
Then, of course, you guys, like you said, you went to Pensacola. You guys were in CCW, aka CWF, together. So you guys, literally from '82 to basically '89, had this big run together. Then in '95, he shows up in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, obviously taking some time away from WCW, and you guys, fight again there. So it's you guys, meaning Del Rey, yourself, and Terry Gordy defeated Brad Armstrong, Dirty White Boy, and Tracy Smothers at the Halloween
Hmm.
Scream Tour in '95.
Yeah.
And then Gibby, Robert Gibson, and you guys defeated Armstrong, Smothers, and Dirty White Boy. So really interesting there. I mean, you guys keep resurfacing against each other. Be fun
Well,
to get away.
in Pensacola, uh, Brad had a condo and we had a condo right next to each other, and uh, and I was working with him in that area too, and it was a lot of fun. And then coming back to Tennessee and being able to work with them too, it's like working with guys like that, Brad, rock and roll, Tracy, white boy. You knew going in that everybody was on the same page, and and knew what to do instinctively. So uh, that's what I say. It's there. There's a method to the madness, and Brad had it.
The last match I see from you guys was a CCW reunion in 2004. You actually beat Brad by DQ in Dothan, Alabama. Crazily enough.
Yeah. Well, the last match would be Pell City. You got his Pell City match on there. That would be the
Oh
Pell
no.
City match. Yeah, yeah. 3 days before, or a week. Well, whenever it was. It was Pell. I'll tell you what it was. It's right here. Pell City was his last match. That was on October 27th. So
Wow.
yeah, it was Brad Mad Dog against myself and Mike Taylor.
Wow, that's not even listed here in anything I can find. Wow, look at
Well,
that.
it should
Nice.
be. Yeah, it
Yeah, it
should be
wasn't on
listed.
there. Wow.
So there you have it.
Interesting. Did you guys get the win or you lost?
Of course we lost. We're the
No.
heels. Good guys won.
And then, of course, the Brad Armstrong Memorial Show, which was held in 2013. Tim Horner and yourself, I guess you're kind of filling in for Brad there, defeated Bob Orton Jr. and George South.
Yeah, we did. Was that in Knoxville? That was in Knoxville. No, that was in where was that? Carolinas?
Knoxville, Tennessee, at the amphitheater.
Okay. Knoxville. Yep. Well, there you
Yeah,
have
we
it.
You think about that, Brad Armstrong Memorial Show. Obviously, 1 year after he had passed, but you get to team up with Tim Horner, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. It's
Well, yeah.
still
What do you
an
mean by unfortunate? What's that supposed to mean? I just I filled the shoes actually. So no, man. Yeah,
big shoes to fill.
big shoes to fill. No kidding. No kidding. But I think he'd be happy that I did. I think he's happy that we go visit him every year or two. It gets cold sitting there in that Marietta sun and that Marietta shade and that Marietta wind. But uh, it's kind of cool sitting around and just shooting the shit. And I always like hearing what Lash has to say. And this year it's going to be Les, Thatcher, myself, and Lash kind of hanging out. So
With that, obviously, pretty cool to kind of get 3 generations really of wrestlers together. Les is like super old school. You'd be old school, then Lash, somewhat old school, but not
somewhat
not,
old
not
school.
yeah, not
Yeah,
necessarily. Yeah,
yeah. He's not as old school as Les and me. That's true.
yeah.
But he's welcome nonetheless. I mean, so yeah. It'll be cool. It'll all work out.
What's just so random, and I saw somebody posted this earlier in the week. Brad Armstrong worked in WWE as an announcer. I don't remember that at all.
He did some commentary with Taz and Michael Cole.
Wow,
Well, they
weird.
were trying. They were trying to do the same thing because Brad was the same way backstage, and everybody was saying, "Man, this guy is awesome. He'd be so great on commentary with Taz back and forth." And he was trying to do it, but I think once again, uh, I don't know if it's correct to say it was confidence or lack thereof, or it just wasn't gelling. Either way, it wasn't working. I know that. And he tried it. They did it, I think, 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and finally, it just wasn't working. So yeah, he did. I heard some of it, and
Weird. It's like scratched from my memory. I didn't remember that. And I saw that picture. It's like,
that's
wow.
why I say, okay, well, do you
Yeah,
remember? Do you remember Brockus?
of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you remember that match he had on Raw? No,
No.
because he never had a match on Raw. They just showed the
No.
vignettes. Yeah, he's coming, but then he left before he came. So there's a few things that you might not tickle your memory unless you unless you had a connection to it. And I was going, yeah, good
He should have
luck.
been world champ.
Yeah,
Brackus,
talking
not
about
Brad.
Brockus. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just
not
saying.
Brad. Brackus.
Yeah,
Brackus. Yeah.
sure. Well,
Occam Albright. Vince loved him.
Ockham. Yes, good guy.
I
Good
wonder
guy.
what he's up to today.
Well, I wouldn't know, but I hope he's well. I really do.
So with Brad, what do you think is the legacy of Brad Armstrong? What's everybody remembering him for? Because it seems like
As
being the
yeah.
best worker, pretty much.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me take a drink.
All right, take that drink. I wonder what was in there.
Me too. Okay. I think no. The legacy of Brad Armstrong is he was the guy that could work with anybody, and um, I'm going to say one of the greatest workers up to this date. When you have the world champion requesting to work with you, and it wasn't. I don't think it was just in Pensacola. I think if Brad was in, I'm not sure he got a shot in Mid South or not. Anyway, but I think his legacy would be one of the greatest workers in the business, at least in top 20, top 10. I know that's people are going to say what, but wait a minute. Let's really look at this and what a great worker is, and what he works for the match, and he's going to make the other guy look great and make himself look great at the same time. And that's his legacy, one of the best.
So let's head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. Dr. Tom, I guess we can follow you on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard and go to Pro Wrestling Tees, prowrestlingtees.com, and get the JPWA stuff or get the Dr. Tom stuff. I love the Wanted Dead or Alive shirt. Also, of course, your book. Where can everybody get the book?
Well, John, you can get the book at jpwrestlingacademy.com, and you can also find out everything you want to know about our winter training starting in January 2023. We're in our 5th week now, the last class of 2022, and we're taking January with a vengeance this year. So we've already got a bunch of people who've applied and sent back contracts, and we're getting ready for an exciting 2023. That's jpwrestlingacademy.com. Get the book and find out how you can apply.
What else you got going? Anything else?
Well, yeah, we've got some NWA coming up in New Orleans. It is Hard Times in New Orleans. I think 2 days on I know everybody. It's going to be the 12th and 13th.
12th and 13th of November,
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and Luke Hawks is promoting that event too, I think, and doing a hell of a job. Luke Hawks is talk about getting a buzz created for yourself. He's been doing a hell of a job.
Yep.
Lately. Yeah. So
he's all over the place. Young Rock, he's just that. He's on all these wrestling projects. He seems to be he's dominating right now.
Good for him. It's the way to do it.
Little known fact: he gave me a little bit of a fat lip one time. I interfered a fat lip. I interfered in his match against Shane Douglas at the ECW arena, and I was just trying to be Shane's manager. I was just trying to help him. He popped me.
You despicable asshole.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you deserved it then.
Yep.
Good. Yeah.
But Luke did not care. He did not care. That's okay.
He shouldn't care. That's true. Yeah.
But thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Take It to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. See you next week, folks.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.